Greetings one and all. We're on Super Wednesdays, believe it or not. This time it fell out on the Super Wednesdays. I know everybody's thinking that Super Sundays, but we're thinking Super Wednesdays here in the Holy Land, the Holy Apple, the Holy Hilltop, Tal Binyamin. We're on the 21st day of the month of Shvat, 5781, winding down the holy month of Shvat. Okay, today, with God's help, we have a very, very special class, and just a heads up, I know that sometimes people get nervous if you talk about a holiday too much before its time or after. People want to be like real time, you know. But we will be discussing here the holiday of the 15th day of Shvat, but that's not the subject, and this class is of the utmost importance as far as our ideology, as far as our hashkafa, understanding of our times that we live in, and looking through history, looking through our times through the glasses of Torah and Judaism. So don't get stuck up in the holiday. We're just using it as an anchor. Okay, our title today is the following. Is the anti-Torah Judaism state of Israel the beginning of redemption? Is the anti-Torah Judaism state of Israel the beginning of redemption? Okay, so put on a couple of seatbelts here. We're going to go. Okay, let's start out with some current events, some news events. I just want to say that what I have here from the Israel Press, just want to let you know that I very rarely go into the Israel Press. I know much more what's happening in the world than in my backyard here in Israel. So imagine, I'm going to give you a lot of current events here, and this is coming from a person, me, that I very rarely go on to like Channel 7, Arutz Sheva news. So think, if I was really connected to news, we might be here for quite some time. Okay, let's take it from the top. The anti-religious group in Israel called Chidush, which is kind of a funny name because Jewish anti-Semites are nothing new. Chidush in Hebrew means new. So it's very interesting that it's an acronym of who they are, but it's funny that it's nothing new here. Jewish anti-Semites, for thousands of years, we've dealt with them. Anyways, after this group of anti-Jewish, anti-religion, Torah, secular group called the Chidush, after being victorious in the Supreme Court, the Chidush group, they went to the Supreme Court, or as I like to call them, the not-so-Supreme Court, and they claimed that the law in Israel, which does not allow chametz, unleavened leavened bread, in the hospitals during the 7 days of Passover, is a law which is undemocratic, and it's religious coercion. So they took this anti-Torah Jewish group, they took the leading chief rabbis of Israel to the not-so-Supreme Court, where, drumroll, they were victorious. The group Chidush, they were victorious against the chief rabbinate. Now, after their success, you know, you have to go on. So now their latest battle is they sent a letter to the chief of staff. His name is Aviv Kochavi. They sent a letter to him demanding that in the army, in the IDF, there's also a law by the rabbinate of Israel that no chametz is allowed in the army bases. So this, of course, upsets the Chidush group, and they wrote him a letter demanding that the army Passover coming up in less than 6 weeks. So now they're demanding that chametz, leavened bread or grains, should be allowed into the Jewish IDF army. Next, a reporter, another Jewish Israeli anti-Semite, Uri Mizgav, published an article recently in the Haaretz paper. Now, if you're not familiar with the Haaretz paper, this is the first, as the rabbi would tell us, this was the first anti-Semitic newspaper in the Hebrew language. There are many anti-Semitic newspapers, but in the Hebrew language, Haaretz was the first. Anyways, in a recent article that he published in the Haaretz rag, he was blaming the religious population for the coronavirus. If you ever wanted to know, it did not start up in Wuhan. It actually started up in the religious communities, and they're spread miraculously all over the world. One of these traditional, he might not be traditional, but it's definitely a traditional blood libel against the religious community. And then he goes on, this reporter, I'm not going to say his name again, the religious are more dangerous than the Hezbollah and the Iranian forces. Got that? The religious community in Israel are more dangerous than Hezbollah and the Iranian forces. They are first to receive allocations to their learning institutions, but they are enemies of the state. We need a secular intifada. Yeah, remember there were 3 intifadas where the Arabs threw Molotov cocktails and rocks and stabbings and shootings, bombings. So we need a secular intifada against the religious community, against the enemies of the state. You heard it here first. Okay, next story. Recently, the army publicized the fact that commanders are no longer allowed to use in the IDF the terminology to kill the enemy. You're not allowed to use the terminology to kill. Shoot, to kill. No, that's no longer here in modern day Israel. You must use the term neutralize, to neutralize the enemy, not to kill the enemy. So if there's a danger, you must neutralize the enemy and not kill the enemy. Okay, another reporter here, Yael Friedson, another anti-Semite, was complaining about one of the Hotel Coronas. I'm not sure exactly where this Hotel Corona was, but you know, I cannot leave that without it reminds me of the Hotel California, such a lovely place. You know, come into the Hotel California. So this is the Hotel Corona. What was upsetting the Israeli reporter Yael Friedson? See, there was a story, a very moving and emotional story that was done by another reporter named Dvir Amar. Dvir Amar did an unbelievable, he shot some footage of this Hotel Corona with the religious population, and it's an amazing sight. You see hundreds of boys and men learning. You see people with hats on, learning with people with knitted kippot. You see people from a Hasidic background learning with Litvak backgrounds. Really amazing scenarios, you know, and some guys have their hand, over their friend. It was really moving. So this was bothering, these scenes were bothering Yael Friedson. Why is that? It's not bad enough that they went out and infected each other, Yael said. Now the state of Israel has to pay for them. Yeah, the state of Israel has to pay for them. Very interesting if Yael Friedson has the same. There are many Arabs in these Hotel Coronas. I wonder if also that bothers her with all the Arab weddings and hundreds of invitees and sicknesses in the Arab communities. That probably did not bother Yael Friedson. Moving right along here, a lawyer from Chabad Gilad, happens to be a friend of mine. His name is Shimon, Yehudah Shimon. And Yehudah Shimon recently participated in a demonstration on Saturday night near the settlement of Kedumim, not to about approximately maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes from the Holy Apple here. They were protesting the killing probably the killing of a 15-year-old settler boy named Ahuvia Sadak. And there at the demonstration, the army claimed that one of the officers of the Golani Brigade was attacked by this lawyer, Yehudah Shimon. Hard to, knowing him, it's really hard to believe that he attacked anybody, but that's what they claim. Now, you have to note, now this is really an illness. After the lawyer, Yehudah Shimon, was accused by the army, or by the police, of attacking an officer in the Golani Brigade, accused, which of course is totally denied, as we will see in a minute. But the point here is that the settlement of Kedumim decided, without investigating the situation, that in a couple of days from that demonstration on Saturday night, they too would hold a demonstration in defense and in honor of the holy IDF. Without investigating, without giving a call, without knowing the background to this, they are there, the patriots. The patriots, when it comes to the IDF, you know, that is a cardinal sin. When it comes to stepping upon the Torah and the religion, we don't really see them demonstrating. What an illness. Many years ago, in a previous election, with so many elections, hard to know exactly when it was, but the National Religious Party of memory, their major slogan and shirts and banners and flags was, "We give our neshama to the state." Folks, if I had to come up with a banner or a slogan, that takes the gold medal. Because how true it is. Unfortunately, there are many from that, not all, God forbid, and not a majority, but there are many from that community, the National Religious Party, the knitted skull cap community, that they gave up their soul to the state. They sold their soul out to the state. They worship a state. They worship an army, not God, not Hashem, not the Torah, not the commandments. They did, in fact, sell their soul to the state. The state is above all. Anyways, what was the background of this demonstration where this lawyer was arrested? The lawyer, Yehudah Shimon, he saw that some of the soldiers, when they came to remove girl protesters, they started groping the girls in an immodest fashion. Without getting into detail, I don't know who's watching here, it's G-rated, this class. When he saw this, he shouted out, "Do not touch them." And then he was pounced on and arrested. Got it? The lawyer from the hilltop community of Chabad Gilad, by the way, I have a daughter, married daughter that lives there, was accused of attacking an officer of the IDF of the Golani Brigade. Moving right along, a high-ranking officer in the Israeli police force, preferring to be anonymous. As soon as you see what he says, you can understand why he prefers to be anonymous in order not to lose his job. He claimed that the government is unleashing the police force violently on the Haredi communities, the Orthodox communities in Israel. Once again, a high-ranking officer in the Israeli police force. The government has given the order to violently go in to Orthodox communities. This past week, a young Jewish teenager, age of 13, who lives in the mixed city of Lod, not too far away from the closed airport of Ben Gurion. In this mixed community, let's see how life is for the Jewish community there. A young Jewish teenager, age 13, went out of his house and he was accosted by 5 Arabs who started beating him up. Anyways, the boy ran back to his house, and there, thank God, there was a neighbor who saw the 5 Arabs chasing after the boy into the building. That's pretty amazing. You would think that they would just, leave. No, they came into the building and started chasing, but once they saw the neighbor, they started running away. The family, the parents, went to the local Lod police department in the city, and they were told to wait. And they did wait. They waited for over 1 hour. No one, during the over 1 hour wait, tremendous patience, not one officer, not one police personnel came out and said, "Listen, we haven't forgotten you. We'll get to you." These are people that came to lodge a complaint. I gave a class a year and a half ago about what happened to me when I came to the Petach Tikva police department to lodge a complaint against Sudan illegals stealing Jewish decorations during the holiday of Sukkot. And nobody cares. You could just wait there for hours and hours and hours. It's not a priority of anybody. After over an hour, with no one relating to this family, they left. And then they went on to say that these attacks happen on a weekly basis, and nothing is done. Welcome to Israel, folks. Okay, we're not talking about the holy over the green line. We are talking about, we are talking about 5 or 10 minutes away from the Ben Gurion airport. We're talking about the center of Israel, what they call the center. It's not really the center, but we'll just call it in that term. And next, Israel has a satire weekly series. It's called Eretz Nehederet, a beautiful land. It's also satire. You know, calling the land of Israel beautiful land as it is called many times in our sources of the Torah, this is also a joke. Got it? The title, How Beautiful Israel Is. This, in their eyes, is a joke. Israel is not beautiful. That's what they really mean. So disgusting title for disgusting people. Anyways, this past week they had they were making satire out of the Gadol Hador, the leading rabbi of our generation, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, Shlita. And anyways, I'm not going to go into it, what they did, but it was a making satire or making fun of Rabbi the Gadol Hador. That's an amazing thing. As we know in the Talmud, it tells us that people that, comedians and satire, who do this for a living, etc., and do this all the time, you don't have to do it for a living, but they will never see, they have no share in the world to come, and they will not receive the divine presence. So, can you imagine if they would take another religious leader, a Muslim leader or a Christian leader, and do what they did to Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky? Never in a million years. But what's the problem? It's only one of the Jewish religious leaders, so that we don't have any problem of making fun of a tremendous Torah giant. Can you imagine? Believe me, if they paid me millions of dollars to be in their shoes, I would not take the money. What's coming their way? Whoa, watch out, folks. Last but not least, we have the basic law. The basic law, it's a funny name, is Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. In Hebrew it's called Chok HaYisod. Now, this law was discussed approximately a year and a half ago, and it recently came up again. We'll understand why. What is this basic law, or the Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people law? What it's all about? It basically has the following principles. The land of Israel is the historical homeland of the Jewish people, in which the state of Israel was established. The state of Israel is the national home of the Jewish people, in which it fulfills its natural, cultural, religious, and historical right to self-determination. Right? This is very extreme, no? The right to exercise national self-determination in the state of Israel is unique to the Jewish people. The name of the state is Israel. The state flag is white and blue stripes and the Star of David in the center. The state emblem is a menorah. The state national anthem is Hatikva, the hope of the Jewish people. The state language is Hebrew. Ingathering of the exiles. The state will be open for Jewish immigration and ingathering of exiles. The state shall act within the diaspora to strengthen affinity between the state and members of the Jewish people. The state shall act to preserve the cultural, historical, and religious heritage of the Jewish people amongst Jews in the diaspora. Jewish settlement. The state views the development of Jewish settlement as a national value and will act to encourage and promote its establishment and consolidation. Official calendar. The Jewish calendar is the official calendar of the state of Israel. Days of rest and Sabbath. The Sabbath and the festivals of Israel are the established days of rest in the state. The basic law shall not be amended unless by another basic law passed by majority of Knesset members. Folks, You want to hear the vote? You better hold on to your seat. The vote a year and a half ago in the Knesset, July 2018, was 62 in favor, 55 against. Amazing. Look how close that vote was. Do you understand? We are dealing with ill and sick government officials here. It barely passed. Not only did it barely pass, of course, they went this past December, in the end of December, a month ago. It went up to the not-so-Supreme Court, the Bagatz. Last but not least, Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman, Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Livarcha, he was murdered in the Holocaust 70 years ago. In his book, Kovetz Mamarei, Ikvat Ad Mashiach, on page 151, he says the following. Once again, this is 70 years ago. This is before the state of Israel. In the land of Israel, where there exists a shadow government, okay, of course there was no Israel that time, but there were organizations that were considered to be the leaders of the Jewish people. So he uses the terminology shadow of a government. They chase with fury and anger after Jews that cling to the Torah. Okay, this is 70 years ago, 70 plus years ago. If they had the power, they would literally kill them. Folks, not a pleasant 27 minutes there, but you got to put the cards, call a spade a spade. I'm not even going back 70 years ago. I'm not talking about different things that happened to the religious population that immigrated into the land of Israel. That's a different class. I've spoken about it in the past. So, this is our question. You've heard it. You heard it with your own ears. I'm not talking about, except for the last words of Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman, may God avenge his blood. These are up-to-date current events. And they are sickening, disgusting, they're anti-Semitic. Even a basic law that states that Israel is Jewish barely survives the vote. Okay, so that's the question. Let's start on the answer. In the first Mishnah, tractate of Rosh Hashanah, the New Year, there is a dispute between the house of Shammai and the house of Hillel. When is the New Year of Trees? According to the house of Shammai, the New Year of Trees falls out on the first day of the month of Shvat. According to the house of Hillel, the New Year of Trees falls out on the 15th day of Shvat, and we all know that we go according to the house of Hillel. As we know, when there is a dispute between Hillel and Shammai, we go, at least in our world, we go according to the opinion of the house of Hillel. Okay, now we must ask ourselves a question here. Question number one. If we look in all of the Talmud, when Beit Shammai gives its opinion, or Shammai gives its opinion, it will say, it will use the word says, Omer, or Divrei. These are the words of. Not here. This is an exception to the rule. It says, Kedivrei, like the words. I mean, did he say it or didn't he say it? This is our question number one. Why does the Mishnah specifically use an unusual once-in-a-lifetime terminology here when it comes to the holiday, to the New Year of the trees? What is it trying to teach us by using this unusual, rare expression? Our second question is that the Jewish people, thank God, have 4 New Years. 4 New Years. I mean, we're lucky in like the States, there's not 4 New Years because it's bad enough the one New Year, what goes on, and the drinking, and the traffic accidents, and the crime, and the beat goes on. So imagine if they had 4. So they're lucky. So we have 3 others in this Mishnah. Number 1, on the first day of Nisan, we have the New Year of Kings. The kings begin their counting of their reign, and not as reign, R-A-I-N. They begin the reign to count the years that they've been in office on the first day of Nisan, and it's also the beginning of the 3 holidays where Jews make a pilgrimage up to Jerusalem: Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, the holiday of booths. Now I'm going to pose a question for all of us out there. Have you ever celebrated? Have you ever partied on the first day of Nisan because it is the new year of those items that I mentioned? I'm sure that nobody is saying yes. But we probably, all of us watching, all of us present, we do celebrate with tremendous fervor the 15th day, the new year of the tree. Unusual. Why is that? On the 1st of Elul is another new year. It's the new year of tithing a person's animals. Now, how many of you out there celebrate the first day of Elul because of the fact that if you happen to have animals, not many people do, but if you happen to have animals and you have to tithe them, what kind of celebration do you have? Last but not least, on the first day of Tishrei, we have also a new year. Not what you're thinking. Not what you're thinking. We have the new year of the sabbatical cycle, the Shemitah cycle, and the 50 Jubilee year cycle, and of vegetables. How many of you out there celebrate? Now, I know you're thinking that, oh, we have the Day of Judgment, but that's not connected to what I'm talking about here. That is another source where the Mishnah tells us that God judges the world in 4 different periods of the year. And one of the periods is the first day of Tishrei, when God judges men. But that's a whole different. We're not talking about this celebration here of the new year, of the sabbatical cycle or the Jubilee cycle, or vegetables. So we must ask ourselves a second question. Right? The first question, remember, first question is, why does it use the terminology? It's like the words of Shammai, and not just these are the words of Shammai. Number 2, why is the holiday of the 15th day of Shvat, why is it such an illustrious celebration? I mean, it's like big time. All the big rebbes, they bring in their flocks, thousands of people, and all of these rebbes, and they bring out the fruits of the land of Israel, and they have special sessions of Torah and singing and celebration. Many people go in their Shabbos, okay? These are all written in books, customs of the day. I'm not pulling it out of my hat, pardon the pun, but these are all in books. It's a day off. It's kind of like a Yom Tov. You heard, I'm using that expression. It is kind of like a Yom Tov. Listen to some of the expressions used. The Rabbi Eliyahu of Izmir, Turkey, he brings down in his book that, in his book Shevet Musar, on the 16th chapter, listen to this. There is an ancient holy custom to bless on fruits and eat fruits on the 15th day of Tu B'Shvat. Be very scrupulous to observe this. Can you imagine this? Like, be careful, guys. Make sure you're going to eat those, those papayas. Make sure you're going to eat those pomegranates. What is going on here? What is the celebration? I mean, compare it to the other 3 New Years. I mean, it pales them. Or Rabbi Yaakov Emden, in his prayer book on the month of Shvat, letter 15, he writes there that the 15th of Shvat is the holiday of the land of Israel. The land of Israel, the holiday of the land of Israel. And therefore, we bring in fruits from the land of Israel. It's a holiday of the land of Israel. Next, from the book Mesilot on page 32, tells us the following. This exciting day of the 15th of Av, Tu B'Shvat, was especially felt outside the land of Israel. Jews all over would eat fruits of the land of Israel. As the Arizal has written in his book, the fruits of the land of Israel bring upon the fear of God to those that partake in them. Everyone felt a love and a holiness for the land of Israel. What is going on? People looking outside the land of Israel. There are stories, we could sit here for a couple of hours and tell stories, the tremendous sacrifice that people went to try to get some kind of fruit into from the land of Israel to Europe, or wherever they were in the world, in the Arab countries, to try to get some piece of fruit and give it out. You know, cut it up small, into small pieces. And everyone felt the love of the land of Israel. What is going on here? This is like a national holiday. Okay. In order to understand what is happening here, we must go to the tractate of Rosh Hashanah, page 10, side B. Before I start, one more point. Almost forgot. Before we start getting to the answer, first point, third question. We just saw right now that there is customs all over the world, in the land of Israel, outside, to eat fruits, and many fruits. According to the Kabbalists, one must eat 30 different types of fruits. Amazing, 30 different types of fruits. I mean, you're going to come, you're going to become fruity after the experience. It's going to come out of your ears. And question is, why are we eating fruits? If anybody goes outside, and you look at trees, almost all the trees look like they're dead. There just ain't no fruit on any of the trees. I mean, I hate to break it to this. So what happens, according to the Mishnah, on the 15th day of Shvat, a sap begins to arise within the bark of the tree, and giving a new life to the tree. This is kind of like the first ingredient of spring. Okay, that's very nice, but it's nothing to do with fruits. Fruits, we know that the world is judged. The Talmud in Rosh Hashanah tells us that God judges the world as far as the fruits of that year in the summer month and holiday of Shavuot. That is when we pray that this new stock of fruits will be plentiful and will succeed. So why in the world are we eating fruit on the 15th day of Shvat when every tree looks like it's dead and there are no fruits on the tree unless you're a citrus fruit? So we had our three questions. Number one, why does the Mishnah use the expression like the words? What's behind like the words of Shammai? As if there's some kind of ideology behind what Shammai is saying. It's not just a particular, it's a general principle of his. Number two, why is there such an illustrious celebration going on only on one out of the 4 New Years? And last but not least, what in the world are we doing eating fruits when there are no fruits on the trees? Save it for another 4 or 5 months. Okay, now, in the tractate of Rosh Hashanah, page 10, side B, there is a 3-way dispute between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. Let me just state, so I won't have to do it again. When we hear the names of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, know that both of them are students of a Talmudic academy. Rabbi Eliezer was a student of the Talmudic Academy of Shammai, and Rabbi Yoshua was from the Talmudic Academy of Beit Hillel, of Hillel. Okay? Now, as we said at the beginning, we have to understand there is a tremendous difference between Hillel and Shammai, or the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai. The house of Hillel are constantly looking for leniency, they're looking for mercy, they're looking for kindness, and the house of Shammai is looking for fear of heaven, they're looking for strength, they're looking for the letter of the law of the truth. So very, very different, we'll call it ideologies. So listen to this. The 3-way dispute. First dispute is, when was the world created? When was the world created? So, Rabbi Eliezer, he tells us the world was created in Tishrei. Now that makes a lot of sense, because Rabbi Eliezer, the representative of Shammai, of strict judgment, fear of God, truth to the T, letter of the law. What does Tishrei represent for Jews? It represents days of judgment, the day of Rosh Hashanah and the day of Yom Kippur. The Jews are being judged. Also during Sukkot, we are still being judged. So that makes sense. Now, also makes sense, according to Rabbi Yoshua, who's the representative of Hillel, kindness, mercy, beyond the letter of the law. He tells us that the world was created in Nisan. Very interesting. What happened in Nisan? The Jewish people exited Egypt, were free from slavery. Now, were they worthy of being freed from slavery? Not at all. Not only were they not worthy, they were on the 49th level of impurity. Not only that, we read on the night of Passover, all of us read that the Jewish people, based on a verse in Shir HaShirim, that the Jewish people were naked, that they did not have any Torah or mitzvot, any commandments. So God had to give them 2. Take 2, you know? Okay, so very clearly we understand why Rabbi Yoshua would say that God created the world during a time of of rachamim, of mercy, of kindness. That is when the world was created. Second dispute. When will the final redemption occur? Okay, jot this down. You're getting secret, privy information here. When will it occur? According to Rabbi Yoshua, of course it will occur in Nisan, because this is a time when even if the Jewish people do not merit the redemption, they will be redeemed just like they were redeemed from Egypt. And of course, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the redemption, the final redemption, will come in the month of Tishrei when the Jewish people are worthy. That's when the redemption will come. The final point of our triangle is, will the Jewish people merit the final redemption if they do not repent? This is discussed in length in the tractate Sanhedrin, page 98. So, of course, you should know by now, Rabbi Eliezer, what's he going to say? You got it. He's going to say that no, only if the Jewish people merit, only if they've repented and they've improved themselves, perfected themselves, that's when the redemption will come. And of course, Rabbi Yoshua from the house of Hillel will tell us that the redemption will come even if the Jewish people do not merit it. Now, folks, drum roll please, who do we go according to? And by the way, Neshama, if you're out there, thank you for pointing that out, that, I get excited when I'm learning or I'm giving a class, so I like hitting the table. Instead of hitting my learning partner, I hit the table. But you pointed that out, and in fact, on the way here, I heard a rabbi pounding on the table, and you're right. So I hope I'm doing a good job not pounding on the table. Neshama, okay. Okay, who is right? Folks, both. Here comes Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin. In many, many places, I'll just give one. He gives in his work, Machshevet Charutz, on page 61. Rav Tzadok comes and he hits it out of the stadium. Hits it out of the park. Grand Slam. Super Bowl victory. He says the following, as we know, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim, both of them are true, just different angles. When there's a dispute in the Talmud, both opinions are correct. When it comes to the Jewish law, we have to decide one, but that doesn't mean the other opinion is not correct. It also is correct, but we have to cut and decide action, how do we do it? Okay, so Rabbi Tzadok of Lublin comes and says the following. If the Jewish people merit redemption, the redemption will be in the month where the Jewish people are being judged. In the month of merit, the month of Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where we're being judged. So if we're okay, that's when it will come. If we are not worthy of redemption, it will come in the month of Nisan, like the words of Rabbi Yoshua. Beautiful. I can't believe you're sitting there. Just like freak out. Beautiful Torah. So that's the discussion here. That is the decision. Now, our last point for this class, God willing, next week, we'll have a second part of this. But for our last part, the concept that I'm telling you is brought down in many, many books. I'm going to mention only two of them. Number one, it's in the book Bnei Yissaschar. The Rabbi of Dinov is unbelievable book, divinely inspired. This principle comes in the work Bnei Yissaschar in the months of Tammuz Av, the fourth discussion, Mamar Dalid. This is also brought in the book Yitziv Pitgam by the Rebbe of Kloisenberg and Tzanz on, it's a 10-volume unbelievable work by the Kloisenberg Tzanz Rebbe, and it's one of the books has a chapter dedicated to the subject of the 15th day of Shvat, Tu B'Shvat. And it is brought down in many, many other books, but that's enough right now. What is the principle here? Listen closely, this is beautiful. Every phenomena in the world, every natural occurrence in the world has a spiritual process that begins 40 days before the conception of the ideal, before the conception of the idea. Once again, every phenomena, every natural phenomena, when it comes into play, into the world, there is a spiritual concept that is created, that already exists 40 days before we actually physically see that natural phenomena come into the world. So this is the conception. The conception period is 40 days before the natural procedure appears. So now, follow this closely. Follow it very closely. We discussed that in the tractate of Rosh Hashanah, 10b, there is a dispute between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua when the world was created. But we have to understand this detail. Rabbi Eliezer told us in Tishrei, right? The first day of Tishrei. And Rabbi Yehoshua tells us the first day of Nisan. But this is not exact. Why? Because on the first day of those opinions, man was created. This was the sixth day of creation. So when we're talking about physical creation coming to the world, we have to go 6 days back. If you take 6 days back, according to Rabbi Eliezer, we come to the 25th day of Elul. That is when the first day of creation came into being. So if you take 40 days trying to go back to the original, to the conception stage, 40 days before that would be the 15th day of Av, a holiday called Tu B'Av. Interesting. But if we look at Rabbi Yehoshua tells us that the world, man was created on the first day of Nisan, but the world was created, the first day of creation came into being, a reality, on the 25th day of Adar. But, once again, according to this principle of the Bnei Yissaschar and many, many others, you always have to understand that something physical that is revealed in the world, it had 40 days before that, the conception begins. The conceiving of the process, it begins. So if we take 40 days before the 25th day of Adar, which is the first day of creation according to Rabbi Yehoshua, take it back, what do you come up with? You come up with the 15th day of Av, Tu B'Shvat. So we have an amazing idea here. Because don't forget, when we spoke about this three-way dispute between Rabbi Eliezer and Yehoshua, one of the issues is when was the world created? But another issue is when will the redemption occur? So, according to Rabbi Yehoshua, the redemption occurs in Nisan, but really on the 25th of Nisan, on the 25th of Adar. So the redemption begins, the conceiving begins 40 days before. The beginning process of the redemption, before it presents itself with facts on the ground, begins on Tu B'Shvat, the holiday of Tu B'Shvat. Redemption. And don't forget, this process of redemption, which begins on Tu B'Shvat, is a process, the third dispute of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua. What happens if the Jewish people do not merit it? According to Rabbi Eliezer, we're out, but not according to Rabbi Yehoshua. So the process of redemption, the conceiving point of redemption, even if the Jewish people do not merit it, begins on the 15th day of the month of Shvat, Tu B'Shvat. Folks, we're just getting started here. Please come back next week. You got to hear, we're really going to hit it out. We're going to tear the roof off the sucker. Take care. Till next week.